The easy life. When I was young, I believed life was simple. My father had plenty of money, so I never had to worry about anything. I didn't study very hard, and I never thought about getting a job. Everything I wanted was always within my reach. If I liked something, I simply asked my father, and he bought it for me. My friends often told me to think about my future, but I always laughed. Why should I work? I would say, why should I worry? My father has enough money, and that's all I need. At that time, I truly believed those words. Every morning, I woke up late and enjoyed breakfast in bed. I spent hours watching television, and many afternoons were filled with shopping or spending time with my friends. We ate at expensive restaurants, wore stylish clothes, and drove fast, luxurious cars. Life felt exciting, comfortable, and completely carefree. I honestly believe it would stay that way forever. Money never crossed my mind because I never had to earn it. Whenever I wanted to travel, I traveled. If I wanted new shoes, I bought them. If a new phone was released, I always got the latest one. My father paid for everything. I never stopped to ask how he earned that money or how hard he worked to provide such a comfortable life. I simply enjoyed what I had. I lived only for today and never gave a single thought to tomorrow. Then one day, everything began to change. My father called me into his room. The moment I saw his face, I knew something was different. He looked more serious than I had ever seen him before. "Son," he said quietly, "we need talk." I smiled confidently and replied, "Of course, Father." But he didn't smile back. After looking at me for a long moment, he said, "You are not a child anymore. It's time you started thinking about your future." I laughed and answered, "Father, I already have everything I need." He slowly shook his head. "No, my son, you have everything because I work hard for it. Life is not always easy. One day, everything can change." I didn't understand what he meant. To me, he was worrying for no reason. I smiled and said, "Don't worry, Father. Nothing is going to change." He remained silent for a few seconds before quietly replying, "We'll see." I didn't know what those words meant. I thought he was simply having a bad day. I left the room, met my friends, spent money without thinking, and enjoyed another carefree evening. I had no idea that my comfortable life was about to change forever. The next morning, I woke up late, just as I always did. I stretched, picked up my phone, and saw several messages from my friends inviting me out. Smiling, I got dressed in my best clothes, sprayed my favorite expensive perfume, and walked downstairs. But the moment I entered the living room, I stopped. My father was sitting there, waiting for me, and his expression was just as serious as it had been the day before. "Sit down," he said. I sighed and sat in front of him. "Father, I already have plans today," I said. He ignored my excuse and looked directly into my eyes. "You are not a boy anymore," he said. "It's time you learn what life is really about." I rolled my eyes and replied, "Father, I already know about life." He gently shook his head. "No," he said, "you don't." Then he stood up and said something I never expected. "Come with me." Without another word, I followed him outside. He unlocked his car, and we drove away in complete silence. I had no idea where we were going. As we drove through the city, I noticed things I had somehow ignored all my life. People hurried to work. Street cleaners swept the roads, and food vendors stood beside their carts serving customers early in the morning. For the first time, I truly looked at them instead of simply passing by. After a while, my father stopped the car. We had arrived in a neighborhood I had never visited before. The buildings were old, the streets were dirty, and the people looked exhausted. My father pointed toward a man selling fruit. "Look at him," he said. "He wakes up before sunrise. He works all day without complaining. Every hour he works is for one reason: to feed his family." I stayed silent. A few moments later, my father pointed toward a small shop where an elderly woman sat quietly sewing clothes. "She has been doing this for 40 years, he said. "She doesn't earn much, but she works every single day." I watched her carefully. She looked tired, but her hands never stopped moving. I had never really noticed people like her before. I had never thought about how many people worked so hard just to survive. My father turned toward me and asked softly, "Do you understand now? Life is not easy for everyone. Millions of people work hard every single day. But you, my son, have never worked even once." His words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to answer. I wanted to defend myself. But no words came out. For the first time in my life, I felt small. For the first time, I saw myself differently. Something deep inside me had begun to change. We got back into the car, and neither of us spoke during the drive home. The faces of the fruit seller and the elderly woman stayed in my mind. Their hard work, determination, and quiet strength were impossible to forget. Until that day, I had never truly understood the value of work or the true value of money. My life had always been easy, but deep inside, I knew I was no longer the same person. Something had changed forever, and although I didn't know what would happen next, I knew my life would never be the same again. After a while, my father stopped the car again. This time, we were standing in front of a large office building. It was his office. I had been there many times before, but only for a few minutes whenever I needed money. I had never really looked around or cared about what happened inside. My father stepped out of the car and looked at me. "Come with me," he said. I quietly followed him inside. The office was full of energy. Employees hurried from one desk to another. Phones rang constantly. Keyboards clicked, and stacks of papers covered almost every table. Everyone seemed busy. My father led me into his office, sat down in his chair, and looked directly at me. "Do you know what I do here every day?" he asked. I shrugged my shoulders. "You work," I replied. He nodded, then asked another question. "Yes, but do you know how hard I work?" I stayed silent. "I wake up before sunrise," he said calmly. "Every day I make difficult decisions. I solve problems, manage this company, and take care of hundreds of responsibilities. Everything I do is to build a better future for you." I slowly looked around the office again. I noticed tired employees typing reports, answering endless phone calls, and rushing to finish their work. Some looked exhausted, while others were clearly under pressure. Until that moment, I had never noticed any of it. All I had ever seen was the money my father handed me. I had never stopped to think about where that money came from or how much effort it took to earn. For the first time, I felt something I had never felt before. It was guilt. Without saying another word, my father picked up a small notebook and placed it in my hands. "Starting tomorrow," he said, "you'll be working here." I couldn't help laughing. "Me? Work?" I asked, almost expecting him to smile. But he didn't. "Yes," he replied firmly. "And you won't begin at the top. You'll start from the bottom, just like everyone else. You have to learn." I stared at him in disbelief. "But I don't need a job," I protested. My father gently shook his head. "Yes, you do," he said, "because one day I won't be here. When that day comes, what will you do?" His words left me speechless. I had never imagined life without my father. I had never really thought about the future at all. My whole life had been about comfort, fun, and spending money without a second thought. But now I had no choice. My father had made his decision. The next morning would be the beginning of a completely different life. For the first time ever, I was going to work. The following morning, I woke up before sunrise. It felt strange. I wasn't used to getting out of bed so early. Normally, I would still be asleep. But this time, I had somewhere to be. I got dressed, walked downstairs, and found my father waiting for me. He handed me a small paper bag. "Here's your lunch," he said. I looked at him, confused. "My lunch? Can't I just eat at a restaurant?" I asked. He smiled slightly and shook his head. "Workers bring their own lunch," he replied. "And starting today, you're one of them." We drove to the office together. When we arrived, I expected him to take me to his large, comfortable office. Instead, he led me into a small room filled with desks and computers. People were already hard at work. A serious-looking man, wearing glasses, walked over to us. "This is Mr. William. My father said you'll be working under him." Then my father turned around and left. Mr. William looked at me without smiling. "Come with me," he said. I hurried after him as he walked quickly through the office. He stopped at a small desk with a simple chair. "This is your place." He placed a large stack of papers in front of me. "Your job is simple," he explained. "Check these numbers, find every mistake, and mark them." I stared at the pile. "There are so many," I said. "Do you mean all of them?" He nodded. "Every single one. And don't waste time." I took a deep breath and got to work. At first, the task seemed easy enough. But after an hour, everything started to blur together. My head ached, my eyes burned, and every page looked exactly the same. I wanted to take a break, but no one else was stopping. Everyone around me stayed focused. No one complained. No one chatted. They simply worked. This wasn't anything like my old life. This was the real world. This was what work looked like. By lunchtime, I was completely exhausted. I opened my lunch bag and found a simple homemade meal. There were no expensive dishes or fancy drinks, just ordinary food. I sat quietly with the other employees. They talked about their families, their bills, and the challenges they faced every day. They laughed for a few minutes, finished eating, and immediately returned to work. No long lunches, no wasting time, just responsibility. For the first time, I realized how hard these people worked. And for the first time, I truly respected them. The afternoon felt even longer. My back hurt from sitting for so many hours, and my hand was sore from writing. More than once, I wanted to quit and go home. Then Mr. William walked over to my desk. He looked through my work carefully. Finally, he pointed at several mistakes. "Do it again," he said. I wanted to argue. I wanted to complain. But instead, I quietly nodded and started over. When the workday finally came to an end, I felt exhausted. Yet I also felt different. For the first time in my life, I understood how much effort it takes to earn money. I realized that every paycheck represents long hours, hard work, and sacrifice. As I walked outside, I saw my father waiting near the entrance. He didn't ask whether I enjoyed my first day. He simply smiled. This time I smiled back, not because life had become easier, but because, for the first time in my life, I had earned that smile. The next morning, I woke up early once again. Every muscle in my body ached, and my hands felt stiff. I wanted nothing more than to stay in bed, but I couldn't. I had responsibilities now. After getting ready, I walked downstairs. My father was already sitting at the table. He looked at me, gave a small nod, and simply said, "Good." It was only one word. but somehow it meant everything. For the first time, I felt that he was proud of me. When I reached the office, Mr. William was already waiting for me. As always, he didn't smile. The moment I arrived at the office, Mr. William was already waiting for me. As always, he wore a serious expression. "You were slow yesterday," he said. "Today, I expect you to work faster." I wanted to make excuses. I wanted to tell him how tired and sore I was. But I stayed quiet. Instead, I walked to my desk, sat down, and got to work. The same stack of papers was waiting for me. The same endless rows of numbers filled the pages. My head still ached from the day before, and my body hadn't fully recovered. But this time, I didn't complain. I simply took a deep breath and kept going. By lunchtime, I had finished my assignment. Mr. William carefully checked my work. This time, he found only a few mistakes. He looked up at me and said, "Better." It was only one word, but somehow it meant more than I expected. That simple word made me feel prouder than buying expensive clothes or spending money on things I didn't need. For the first time, I experienced the satisfaction of earning someone's respect instead of buying someone's attention. Something inside me was changing. The person who once hated work was beginning to enjoy the challenge. During lunch, I sat with the other employees instead of eating alone. They talked about their families, shared stories about their children, laughed about small moments in their day, and discussed the problems they faced outside of work. Their lives were not easy, yet they kept smiling and showing up every morning. As I listened, I realized something. Not long ago, I had never paid attention to people like them. I had never wondered about their struggles or appreciated how hard they worked. But now, I wasn't watching them from a distance anymore. I was sitting beside them. I was one of them. The afternoon brought even more work. Mr. William placed another stack of papers on my desk. "Let's see if you can handle this," he said. For a moment, I wanted to complain. I wanted to tell him I was already exhausted. But instead, I nodded and got back to work. Hour after hour, I stayed focused. My back hurt from sitting all day, and my hands ached from writing. Every part of me wanted to stop, but I refused to give up. I wasn't trying to impress Mr. William anymore. I was trying to prove something to myself. When the workday finally came to an end, Mr. William walked over to my desk one last time. He looked through my work carefully. He didn't smile. He never did. But before walking away, he quietly said, "Not bad." Just two simple words. Yet they meant more to me than I could explain. I smiled to myself as I packed my things and walked outside. My father was waiting near the entrance. He looked at me and asked, "Tired?" I nodded. A small smile appeared on his face. "Good," he replied. For the first time, I truly understood why he had brought me here. He wasn't trying to punish me. He was preparing me for life. And for the first time, I wasn't looking for a way to escape work. I wanted to learn. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Every morning, I returned to the office. The work slowly became easier. My body grew stronger, my mind became sharper, and I made fewer mistakes. I finished my tasks more quickly, and little by little, I gained confidence. Mr. Williams still wasn't the kind of person who smiled often, but he stopped criticizing every little mistake. Sometimes, after checking my work, he would simply say, "Good job." Those two words meant more to me than any expensive gift I had ever received. As time passed, I began to understand something I had never appreciated before. Money doesn't simply appear. It is earned. Every paycheck is a result of long hours, difficult decisions, and countless sacrifices. I started paying close attention to my father. I watched him lead meetings, solve problems, make difficult choices, and carry the responsibility of an entire company on his shoulders. For years, I had only seen him as a wealthy man. Now I saw the truth. He wasn't successful because he had money. He had money because he had worked tirelessly to build something from nothing. One evening, my father called me into his office. He looked at me quietly for several moments before speaking. "You've changed," he said. I didn't know how to respond. He smiled gently and continued. "When you first came here, you were lazy. You didn't care about responsibility or hard work. But now, I can see that you understand." I nodded. He was right. I wasn't the same young man who believed life would always be easy. I had become stronger, more patient, more responsible. Then my father reached into his pocket and placed a small key in my hand. "This belongs to you," he said. I looked at him in surprise. "My own office?" I asked. He smiled and nodded. "You've earned it. You're ready for more responsibility. It's time to take the next step." I stared at the small key resting in my palm. It wasn't just a piece of metal. It was something far more valuable. It was trust. The following morning, I unlocked the door to my own office for the very first time. It wasn't large or luxurious, but it was mine. I had my own desk, my own chair, my own responsibilities. I was no longer just learning how to work. I was learning how to lead. The journey wasn't easy. I still made mistakes. Some days were frustrating, and not every decision was the right one. But unlike the person I used to be, I never gave up. I kept learning. I kept improving. Every day, I became a little more like my father, not because I wanted his money, but because I wanted to build something meaningful with my own hands. When I look back today, I can't help smiling at the person I used to be. I honestly believed life was supposed to be easy. I thought money would always be there. I thought success came without effort. I couldn't have been more wrong. Life is built through hard work. Success is earned through patience. And the greatest reward isn't having money. It's becoming someone capable of earning it. That is the lesson my father gave me. And because of that lesson, I no longer fear the future. Not because I inherited wealth, but because I learned how to create it for myself.